Well, hello, everybody.
Yes.
My name is Michelle Heinz, and I'm the Executive Director of Inside Out Reentry Community, and I'm also here with and we will be talking a little bit about our organization, what we do, some of the barriers that individuals face when they're returning to the community after incarceration, as well as some ways that you can get involved if you are interested. It's nice to see a face that we know here in the audience, Allison, who also works at Inside Out. So it's a little Inside Out party here, and we're excited to be here at Oak Knoll. So Inside Out, our mission is to support people involved in the criminal legal system and changing from the inside out and to educate the public in order to promote healing, restore relationships, and achieve success in the community. We are based in Iowa City, and we predominantly support individuals returning to the community right here in Johnson County. So there's always a caveat with that, I will say, which is there are not a lot of reentry organizations, nationally or even across the state. So if we get a letter to our office from somebody who's getting out of prison and going back to Des Moines, we will try to provide them resources for the Des Moines area so they can be set up to be successful. So we predominantly support here in Johnson County. That's where we're based. It's where we really know the most, but if someone needs some support, we're not going to completely turn them away just because they're not located here. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that individuals face when they return to the community. There is one statistic that I always think is really kind of important to think about, which is 95% of everybody who's incarcerated right now will be coming back to the community. So, of course, there are individuals that serve life sentences and spend the rest of their life incarcerated. The vast majority of people that are incarcerated are going to be coming right back out in the community. They're going to be our neighbors, they're going to work with us, they're going to live with us, and so reentry support is really important so folks can come back out and be successful. And Eddie, please feel free at any point if you want to jump in and talk about any of these barriers, we can pass the microphone back and forth. One I'm going to mention is the social stigma and isolation. Unfortunately, our society really views individuals who've been incarcerated as different or other, and there can be a real stigmatizing effect of that. And that is, it happens on that person directly and also family members of that person. I've been in my role for about 5 years at Inside Out, and there was one moment that I thought was really poignant. Was there was someone that I had known a very long time in my life. I knew that she had lived with her grandmother for a very long time of her childhood. And it wasn't until voting rights became a big hot topic a few years ago, she called me up and said, hey, there's something I want to tell you, my mom is incarcerated, she has a felony, can she vote? And I had known this, known this person for probably close to a decade, and she had never felt comfortable with sharing with me that her mom had been incarcerated, because there's just so much stigma in this society that what the story was just, well, we went to go live at grandma's. And that stigma can really carry with people and affect how they're going to rejoin the community, how they're going to feel walking into employment or some of these opportunities. Another barrier that faces folks is transportation. So when you get involved in the legal system, you often owe a lot of money in fines and fees. And so what the state does is they say, well, we're going to pull your driver's license. And until you can get your driver's license back, you got to pay us some money. So this might be cases where someone's never even had a driving violation in their life. It's just they owe money, so they can't get their driver's license back until they can start making payments. And so that barrier plays a big issue for a lot of folks. Obviously, we have a wonderful transit system here in Iowa City, but it doesn't go everywhere. And it can take a long time to get to point A or point B. So if you're trying to find a job clear across town, it can be really hard to get around without that driver's license.
I would like to say, start with the social stigma and isolation. As I said, my name is Eddie Walker, and I was incarcerated. Before I was incarcerated, I'm a retired chef, and I lived here 20 years. restaurants in the area. And then on Halloween night, I was with the wrong individual that did something stupid, and it led me to go to prison. And never being here, getting out, as Michelle was saying, you're stigmatized. You know, for instance, housing. I had never had a problem paying a bill, never got evicted from any place, didn't have any bad credit, but because I was labeled a felon, all of a sudden I couldn't rent a room. You know, and inside out was there, and it's very hard when you've been a person that has been very independent, you know, taking care of my family, and all those things. You face a lot of discrimination, you know, affordability, because when you come home, like I said, the average person, you leave there owing a lot of money. It's designed that way. And as I say, or Michelle was saying, you need your license, you know, you need everything. You need a social security card, you know, you don't have anything except for what you come home with, you know, and so when you look at, you know, trying to get to employment, filling out applications, you know, transportation, just everything, you know, accessing basic services, you know, so much has changed, but Inside Out is there, and, you know, I'm blessed to have been connected with Inside Out because they helped me every step of the way, you know, and I'm currently property manager of Parkview Church now. I was city post office. And I thank God for Inside Out because their door was open and said all these things were an obstacle, a hurdle that you had to get over. And like I said, never having a problem. You know, I had a home, you know, in the park, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, it seems like every door you face, it was closed. You know, a lot of the, say, apartments, things like that, a lot of the renters, they take credit checks from you when they know as a felon they're not going to rent to you. So you take your money from someone that can at least afford it. So all these things are just a major hurdle. And, you know, thank God for Inside Out and people like Michelle.
One other piece I want to mention, when he's talking about the affordability of housing, there's something that a lot of landlords have been doing for a while, which is they'll say, oh, we'll rent to you, but only if you pay a double deposit. And, you know, most people don't have 3 months worth of rent just, you know, laying around that they can just throw out there. So it's like you're not only paying your first and your last month's rent, which is usually the standard, now you've got to throw an entire other month on top of it. And, you know, when Eddie was talking about sort of the financial ability, what you come out, what you have, when you work in the facilities, you make between, what is it, 20 and 40 cents an hour? Am I correct?
The cheapest is probably about 19, 20 cents. Probably starting to maybe 29, 30 cents an hour.
So when you're only making about 30 cents an hour, even if you're trying to save up everything you can while you're incarcerated, you're not coming out with 3 months rent saved up that you can get housing and put a roof over your head. Another really large barrier facing folks is that a huge portion of folks that are incarcerated have pretty severe mental health issues or substance use issues. You know, they end up incarcerated because predominantly of a substance use issue, and incarceration on its own doesn't really take away somebody's mental health or substance use concerns, and so when they come right back out in the community, now they're faced with all the stress. I mean, someone was telling me the other day that moving is one of the top 5 most stressful things you can ever do. So imagine finding a new job, finding housing, reconnecting with family, doing it all within like a month of each other. That's got to rate as, you know, beyond that top 5 stressful list. So just because I always like to throw a few extra stats in here so you can kind of see the huge proportion, they estimate that there's about 5 million people in the United States that are currently on probation or parole. So there's a really large amount of individuals that are on some form of correctional supervision. So it really touches a lot of communities. And I would say one benefit that's happened as of late is that employment's gotten a bit easier for folks. In the past 5 years, I've seen a lot of shifts as far as getting work. So people are getting work a lot easier, which is great. The only downside with that is that some fields are still really hard to get into. So, for example, if you went to college and you got a graphic design degree and you're like a really skilled graphic design artist, if you're formerly incarcerated, it's probably going to be very hard to get hired by those types of positions. But, you know, unemployment isn't all created equally, I say, in the sense that there's different rates. So, you know, white men typically have the lowest unemployment rates, and then when you look, for example, for formerly incarcerated black women, they have the highest unemployment rates. And so people are not only just looking at the background, but there's also the racial impacts as well, and discrimination that happens in our community. A really important statistic is that after incarceration, individuals are 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general public. And a lot of that comes from what like me and Eddie are talking about. It's hard to find housing. And if you can't find housing, you can't find housing. And you end up, you know, crashing on somebody's couch or staying in the shelter to try to just maybe get some support to get housing. And we mentioned before about the stigma. You know, they say, they've done some studies that shows that the public believes formerly incarcerated people are just violent or dangerous, regardless of whatever they may have done or their background. Is just this sort of fundamental belief that like, oh, you've been incarcerated, you're somebody I need to be scared of. I mentioned a little bit about mental health before. This statistic is something that the Department of Corrections puts out, which says that 73% of women and 55% of men in state prisons show symptoms of at least one mental health problem. I would say that that number is actually pretty low. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that if you don't trust the person you're talking to, are you going to tell them that you've got some things you need some support with? A thing I always say is that if you didn't have some trauma before prison, prison probably traumatized you as well. So there's not too many people that are walking out without some sort of negative effects that's going to impact their life moving forward. And when someone's re-entering, it's a stressful time. It's when people are really vulnerable. And if you are just struggling to find housing, a job, get across town, all of these things, going and trying to make a psychiatrist appointment, show up to therapy if you can even find a therapist that can get you in quickly, is really hard. So people tend to deprioritize their mental health. I mean, it's just, they're just trying to put food in their bellies and, you know, see their kids. And so it's a big issue, and I think that if we can find a way to really make sure that mental health care is a lot more accessible for everybody, we really will see a lot less of folks returning to the community and sort of overall wellness.
I like to say too, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the mental issues that people face coming home, so many of them, especially someone that's not been incarcerated before, take medication to sleep, things like that. And a lot of times, the medication that they take is very addictive. And if you're in there for years, taking this medication constantly, especially being in a place that you feel that you have to be on guard all the time, it affects your mental state, you know. So then when they come home, you have to readjust and get away from that. And it's not easy all the time. And so it can be very difficult. And sometimes some people never get over it. You know, so it is a barrier that can be, you're looked at in a way that, you know, like I said, a lot of times people don't want to open up about what really is going on because you don't know how you're going to be perceived or looked at. And so that makes it, you know, just that much more difficult. You know, so it's hard.
We're going to talk a little bit about what we do at Inside Out.
Inside Out is a major resource center. apartments, for jobs, they have job listings, just some of everything. You have mentoring and support groups throughout the week, and it's usually generally always someone, like I mentor to a lot of young and old people, so, I've had people ask me to mentor and talk to their grandparents, but inside out does some of everything, like help find employment, housing, access to other community resources, because like I said, a lot of times people, get out, you don't have ID, you don't have a social security card, none of that stuff. So, all those little things like that make a difference. The transportation system, assistance, was like bus passes, bus tickets, so you can get to a job interview or to, the post office if you go to the post office. Whatever it is, we try to have life skills training, friendship, social activities and opportunities to serve the community. Inside Out is always hosting something. Whether it's like coffee connections, or we might play games, have food. A lot of the time at community meetings, the chef I would cook. Get together and sometimes Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all kinds of turkey. Correspondence and planning with culture individuals. A lot of times we write cards, letters, stuff like that. Try to lend support and just uplift individuals that are incarcerated. Sometimes you might make a mistake. That happens sometimes. So let people know that they're on the wrong. And that's one of the major things to me. Inside Out, it helps with some of everything. And it makes a difference. It truly does. Because like I said, when you don't have anything, really no one to turn to, having a place like Inside Out can make a difference in going back to prison or getting started on a path that you really want to be on, doing the right thing.
That's that, Eddie. Only thing that I will throw in is with the correspondence, reentry planning, we write, so you can put in kind of perspective, we write to about 150 incarcerated people every year. And they're in jails and prisons all across the state. And what I will say is that our volunteers play a really large role in this because letter writing is an art form and it takes time. And I don't have a lot of time. I sit down, I can, write a letter really quick, but we have these wonderful volunteers that will sit and they have these long correspondence pen pals with folks and they'll sit and spend an hour, handwriting a beautiful letter. And, it means a lot to the folks on the inside to have that support, and some of it is very resource specific, like, hey, this is a place you can apply for a job when you get out. Here's, where there's substance use treatment, and other times it's, hey, how's it going? How's life? I went camping last weekend. This is what happened. How was your week? What happened for you? And just really trying to stay as connected as we can with folks in the community. Here's a little quote that I think Eddie said this. This has been on the slide for a little bit. Do you want to read it?
I did say that. Inside Out Reentry Group is all about helping those that need help the most. Like myself, I returned home after 18 years, and very few people extended their hand, but Inside Out Reentry was there and is still behind me. Amen. I would not have a roof over my head if not for them. And I said that at the prison release simulation shortly after I came home. I came home right before COVID hit in 2019. And I volunteered. That was my first event working with Inside Out. I was an actual parole officer at the event. And it's kind of weird because one was he passed away, but Don, who was a volunteer with us, really nice guy, had invited us to come and speak to the retirement home on Camp Cardinal Road. And we go out there and I was talking. And I was talking about the decade that I spent cooking at the University Athletic Club on Melrose back in the glory days, you know, from 84 through 94. And a bunch of the people that were there, you know, all of a sudden it's like, hey. And it was like, you know, oh my God. And they were coming out giving me hugs and everything, you know. They remember me from my days at the athletic club. And that's just, you just never know. So we're always supposed to come, you know, and speak and talk to some beautiful people like yourselves. And that's when I put this quote together.
That was not intentional, it was just there. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's very exciting to us, which is our reentry house, which Allison here has been playing a really large role in. So we are developing our own reentry housing. And so, as we've talked before, housing is a significant barrier for folks getting out. So just this March, we purchased a house. And so the plan right now is early fall 2023. So I'd love July, August okay, September if we have to. But I'm not a contractor. I can't fix bedrooms, so I will just have to stay on this side of things and work on it. But yes, it will be a 6-bedroom home, specifically for low-income men recently released from incarceration. And one of the things we're so excited about this house, we got very lucky too, because it's beautiful, but it has these large communal spaces. And so everyone's going to have their own bedroom. It will be furnished, and it'll just have these nice big spaces that people can watch TV together. They can socialize, so they won't be stuck, you know, kind of locked behind their bedroom door if they'd like. So we are very excited about this house. And some of the things that we'll offer with it, as I mentioned, everyone's bedroom's going to come furnished, because we know when they're getting out, they don't have anything. So it'll be, hey, come here, we've got the bed, we've got the end table, the dresser, all set up and ready to go for you. The low rent, we were lucky to get a lot of financial support from the community, from grantors, that it's going to be cheap. Low rent, all utilities, everything in one simple payment. So folks can come out and not have to worry about, oh, I gotta pay my light bill, I gotta pay this. No, they just have to pay one bill every month. And the hope is that since the rent is going to be low, they're going to be able to start saving some money, so that when they're ready to move out, they've got something saved up, and if they have to go do that double deposit thing, they'll at least have some money put aside for that. It's going to be transitional housing, so folks can stay for up to 2 years or 24 months, but they can leave sooner if they want. A lot of folks might want to, especially if they have family or loved ones that they might want to cohabitate with sooner. And some of the things that we're going to provide in the house is a weekly house meeting, and all those other things that we've discussed before, helping someone get signed up for Medicaid, getting the ID, finding employment. The benefit is we're going to be going to the house every week, you know, a few days a week, and we can pop in and do those things. Hey, we'll pick you up. Hey, I'm coming over, we'll get on the computer together, and we'll do some of those things so you don't even have to worry about traveling across town. We're going to be there, you know, right in the house to be able to support you. Allison, do you want to say anything else about the reentry house?
Sure. I know most of you because I work here at Oak Knoll, and I moonlight with Inside Out. I did my internship there, my first internship in my MSW program, and I will be going back for my next internship, and I just couldn't stay away. So I think that the house is, everything that Inside Out does is important, because there are gaps in our safety net, there are gaps in our social safety net that are being addressed. And I think one of the most important things that Inside Out does is just provide a safe space for people who feel alienated from the community otherwise a lot of the time. So the resource center and the activities that they plan are so, so important. And the house is hopefully going to address another one of those holes in our social safety net, because it's hard. Eddie, you were talking about it, it's hard. And, you know, Inside Out has case managers that help people look for housing, and even with somebody that knows the ins and outs of housing in Johnson County better than anyone else I've ever known, it's still hard. And the house will give people an opportunity to have a safe place to start over and to dream and hope a little bit really important thing about the house is that we brought impacted stakeholders to the table and talked to them. So people who have left incarceration and could have used something like this house, but it was not available. And we asked them, what made your reentry into the community harder? What would have supported your reentry? You know, what kinds of things could we do in this house or as an organization that could really make your first steps back out into the world as strong and stable as possible? And I really think that that is important, to have had those people have the opportunity to say, these are the things that would have helped me. And boy, they were happy to do it, because it's a population of people that want to see people do good. They want to see people be successful, and they're not the type of folks that are going to pull the ladder up behind them. They're going to help each other up. So it's been a great experience. So that's my pitch.
Better said than I could. Thank you, Allison. We're very excited about this house. But please put in the energy for me that it will be opening in July. If any of you can throw out some good vibes for me in that direction, I would appreciate it. Okay, so as Allison was starting to say, safe space is really important to us. We will work with anyone who needs our services. And what I say with that is there's a lot of reentry organizations across the country, and even across the state, that will only work with people who have certain convictions, and they won't work with people who have other kinds of convictions. We don't do that. If you are formerly incarcerated and you need support, we're going to work with you. And in fact, very rarely do we even ever really talk about the things that anybody's done in the past. It's just not relevant to who somebody is today as a person, and that's what we try to support as best as we can. So we want it to be a really safe and non-judgmental place that people can come and get support. They choose the level of involvement that they want to be involved with as well. We have some people that might come in, get help finding a job, and say, thank you so much, and that's the last time we see them. And we have other people that show up every single week to every single meeting that we have, and they're calling the office, and they're chatting with us, and they're getting support in different ways. It's very personalized based on what that person wants to opt in and receive. As Allison was mentioning, we make sure that we have representation of folks in our decision making. I am not formally incarcerated, so I might have a degree and all of that stuff, but I haven't lived the life, and so it's really important for us at Inside Out. We have formerly incarcerated individuals on our board, as staff, as volunteers, and they help us make organizational decisions. It's really important that we're including the voice of the folks that we're serving in the development of what we're doing. We believe in building the leadership of the folks that we work with. Maybe it's finding, if someone says, hey, I want to go back to school. It's like, okay, hey, let's look and see if we can find some scholarships for you. Oh, hey, is there a place that you can volunteer to maybe start doing some of that work? It doesn't mean that we don't hold folks accountable for things, but we do it in an approach that is very accepting, and also understanding that, hey, maybe this was your goal, may not be your goal anymore. Okay, what's your goal now? What are we working on now? And making sure that we're keeping it flexible, and again, keeping that non-judgmental and safe support.
And everything that Michelle said really makes a difference, because so often you just don't have a support system. You just don't have a support system. And having a support system can mean everything. Because like I said, sometimes I've run across individuals since I came home, and I could see they were on the wrong track. Working over at Parkview, I see them all the time. And people say, well, how do you stay focused? And I said, it's by the grace of God knowing what you want and making the right decision. And with the things that Inside Out offers, like I said, up until I went to school, I was there every meeting. I remember when Coffee Connection started, Rich was like, hey, when is your call? Just whatever it was. It just makes, every little thing makes a difference. And everything that Inside Out is putting into this house to help individuals that are coming home makes a difference. Because I remember when I was looking for a place, and And I did, and I got there, and it was one of those things that was crazy, because I get there, and the guy, he's outside raking, his name is Josh Kane, he's raking up leaves, and I told him, I said, man, I lived right across the street from here, back when I was chef downtown, and at Sahara, and he was like, wait a minute, he said, you were chef there? I said, yeah, and he said, my wife was one of your belly dancers, because on the weekend we used to have belly dancers, and I was like, no way, sometimes God directs our paths, you know, just like, you know, with being with Inside Out. And it was just, I ended up not having to need a double deposit, you know, and I lived there 3 years. You know, you just never know. That's why I say always little things might not seem like something that's major, but it's major to somebody that really doesn't have it.
This was a quote that another one of our members we were highlighting him, and we always have to do grant reports and pick like a success story, and he said, hey, what would you like to say? And this is what he said about Inside Out. He said, don't plant seeds where others won't water them. Inside Out taught me to focus on really getting help and being the light in a community, who I need and who I don't need, the guidance a lot of us seek but don't know how to find. And I thought that was a really poignant quote. He was someone that always was at our meetings, sharing and being vulnerable and being a good representative for other people to see, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable in these spaces. So maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, I'd really like to get involved. As a small nonprofit with very few staff, we rely very heavily on volunteers to do our work. And we are always, looking for folks to come and volunteer with us. There are 3 areas that we really need some support with, which is, like fundraising, event planning, and also we need male mentors. So we had mentioned in one of the earlier slides that we have this mentoring program, and what that is essentially is a volunteer in the community is placed on a one-on-one basis with somebody who's currently incarcerated, and they start corresponding and developing a friendship and a support system. And then that support continues as that individual comes out to the community, and it's essentially a friendship and somebody to be there and check in with one another. We are specifically looking for males over the age of 30 to do this, to play this important role. It's important to us because as a part of our reentry house, we're also saying that folks will be paired with a mentor. So I'm in a big push right now. So if any of you are interested or if you know of any males over the age of 30 that might be interested in mentoring, please let me know. I also say as a small organization, there are often skills and things that people in the community have that I don't ever even think about as being a need, but that we need. So if you are out there thinking like, wow, I could probably help the organization with this or that, please don't hesitate to reach out, because it's likely you probably could. We had a University of Iowa student reach out a couple years ago who said, I'd like to make some videos for your organization. And I went, oh, sure. I don't know how to do that. Great, perfect, come on over, let's do some videos. But that was nothing I ever thought to advertise because it wasn't something I thought we needed. But those videos get shown and people like them. So if there's something out there that you're thinking I could really help these guys out, please come up, chat with us. You probably can. Other ways to get involved is to donate to support our reentry house. So as I said, we are collecting things because this house is going to be furnished. So maybe you have a queen-size bed frame, or end tables, lamps, kitchen items, an extra vacuum cleaner, many more items. We're going to fill this house with stuff for folks. So maybe you have some extra stuff lying around that you'd like to donate. We also have like an Amazon wish list if you want to go and purchase a set of mixing bowls. We would gladly take some support for the reentry house. Along that, with the reentry house, we're also asking for folks to help us put together these, what we call welcome home kits. And so when somebody moves into the house and they get into their bedroom, they will be given a welcome home kit. And in there they'll get laundry detergent, a laundry basket, 1 to 2 towels, a couple washcloths, a set of sheets, and a pillow. The beds will stay in the house, but they're gonna need something to sleep on. And so we're interested if any churches or community groups or even individuals would like to kind of put together your own welcome home kit, have it ready to go. We'll be able to collect those and then put them in the house. And one thing that we are asking is that whoever assembles these kits, that you write a handwritten note welcoming the person home and include that in the kit. And trust me, people do really appreciate that. We have backpacks. The one thing I forgot to mention is we provide backpacks full of hygiene products when folks get out, so you don't have to worry about your deodorant, your shampoo, your soap, your toothbrush. All that's provided in a backpack for folks. And we always have people write handwritten notes. Well, sometimes they get stashed in different parts of the backpack, and not too long ago I got a call from someone and they said, I just found this note in my backpack, and they named somebody's name who's not like a volunteer and said, they're like, it was really nice getting a letter from Marie. And I was like, oh, that's nice. But it means it's a soft touch, and I think people appreciate knowing that not only is it just a thing they're getting, but there's actually, a person on the other end that's, thinking about them and wishing them well. All right, so we kind of went through our slides. Eddie, is there anything that you would like to add before we see if anyone has any questions for us?
Not necessarily, just to add to what you said, everything is important. Even, like you said, the letter found in the coffin, in the backpack. Someone maybe opened their backpack and used a deodorant, used a toothpaste, and then a month or so later you're going through the backpack, and next thing you know, it's got like 3 or 4 pockets. Next thing you know, you find this card and letter, welcome and stuff, and you're like, oh my goodness. Things like that is really, it touches you. So whatever you can do, whether it's volunteering, whatever it is, everybody's got something on.
All right, do any of you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah. Why the big difference between male and female mental health issues? I think the female incarcerated rate was 73 and the male was 55.
It might have more to do with the comfortability of people talking. I think there's, when we talk about, stigma, I think that there's a heavy stigma for men, especially, to open up about mental health concerns. And so I think that, a lot of times women might open up a little bit more about what's happening. But I do think that those stats are pretty low. And we've seen it even too. We do an intake whenever we first meet people at Inside Out, and we ask them, if they have any mental health diagnoses. And we've had lots of people that say no. And then as we start working with them and we get to know them better, they say, oh, actually I have, bipolar disorder, or I'm really struggling with PTSD is a big one. So I think, there's that, there has to be that comfortability, and I think, men sometimes just not too much stigma, unfortunately, in men in our society. Yeah?
Is there any state, county, or city support?
Great question. So we get city support and county support, and the rest is all kind of smaller grants and individual donations and fundraisers. We don't get any state support because there is no state reentry funding. It just doesn't exist.
Never has been?
Never has been. So a few years ago, I had the opportunity, the governor created a task force to look at criminal justice reform and reentry, and I got to present at it, which was pretty cool. And that was one of the things I plugged. I said, hey, if you guys are serious about this, you gotta offer some reentry funding, because if there's more funding, then more organizations will be able to pop up and do this work. So there is some federal funding that exists, but it's really big. And so for a small organization like us in Johnson County, $1 million would be great, but that would be a little bit harder for us to do than, a place like in Chicago or LA. So really reentry specific funding is basically kind of non-existent, other than these few large federal grants, and then the rest we cobble together and we make it work the best we can. But we've been lucky to have county and city support for quite a few years now.
do we end up enticing people to come this way to take part in the services?
Sure, there's not many. So Des Moines has a couple big ones, 2 really big ones that do a lot of good work. There's a few others that are scattered. There's one in kind of the Dubuque area, Jail and Prison Ministries, but they cover basically the entire northeastern part of the state. They have like one office, and then they have like 2 people that have to drive like county to county. And they have like support through various kind of churches to house and connect with their work. The challenge is there's not a lot of organizations like us where we provide a real comprehensive kind of overview stuff. A lot of the other organizations have like houses. So they might have 4 houses and all they really provide is kind of housing support. They might have a few other things, but they don't really like have an office that someone can go to and get support. So there's really only a couple that are like us. I'd say probably really across the state we're talking maybe 10 reentry organizations total. And it is hard because, you know, when people get out, they look to areas like Des Moines. They look to areas like Iowa City and they say, hey, there's resources there. You know, can I go there? Because, you know, they're from Keokuk, Iowa, for example. We always get all these letters. I'm not trying to bash Keokuk if anybody's here. But they don't want to go back to Keokuk because there isn't anything there for them. And they want to go to maybe a bigger area that has more support. But as far as really like enticing people in those areas, the way that the system works is they have to go back to the area that they're from unless they get sort of a special transfer. And those transfers just don't really happen unless, let's say, your mom lives in Des Moines and you say, hey, I want to go live with my mom in Des Moines, then they'll say, okay, sure. But most of the time, they have to go back to where they're from regardless. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Who's telling them that they have to go back?
It's just a part of the system. So
Which system?
the Department of Corrections, yeah, because you have like, I can get real complicated with it, but you're basically, there's a county of commitment down to that level. So if you are convicted in Johnson County, that is the county that you will return to. But there's also like judicial districts, and so folks return back to the judicial district in which they're from predominantly. And they can request a transfer, but like I said, it's hard to get them, especially in those types of areas like, I say like Des Moines and here, because that's where people are always trying to transfer to.
2 questions. I also came in 5 minutes late. Is this the program that the sheriff was bringing to Iowa City from Texas when he was first seated?
No, so we've been in existence since 2015. So we are an independent nonprofit. I'm not familiar with what program the sheriff is bringing, but I would be very interested to learn more.
And the next question is, are you able to measure the difference you're making? And what are your results?
Sure. I would love to say that 100% of the people we work with do not return to incarceration. I can't say that. What I can say is that folks are better working with us than they are without us. So the recidivism rate is lower for the folks that we serve versus the overall population. Some of the areas that we've had some really great success is helping people find employment and helping people find housing. And one of the things I will say is that individuals, for example, that are actively engaged in our group meetings have the highest success rates of the folks that we serve. And so if they're actively coming to our community meeting, for example, they are much more likely to find success with employment and housing. And I think a lot of it has to do with the support that they receive in that group. And it's also a very peer motivated environment. So people come and they share resources with one another. They make connections with other really positive people, which I think is what a big challenge is for a lot of the folks that are getting out. As Eddie said before, they don't really have a lot of support. And oftentimes the support they have isn't always the most positive or welcoming. So yeah, I wish I could say everyone that works with me stays here. Not yet. We're working towards it. And we're hoping that with the reentry house in particular, that we're gonna see some really, really good success rates, because that's always one of the biggest barriers for folks getting out, is around that financial stability piece. Because if you can't pay your rent, I mean, it takes a huge toll on your life, your mental health. You start stressing out. You start sometimes making not the best decisions because you're freaking. I mean, I've been in that case before. You know, I get a huge hospital bill and you go, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, and when that happens a lot. So we're hoping with the house in particular, we're really going to start seeing some exciting things.
And to add to what you were asking, I can personally say that you can measure, because coming home in March, like I said, I was released right before COVID, June 2019, and in March, I got my discharge papers. I never had a single violation, anything. And like I said, it really made a difference having support in everybody inside out reentry community. You know, because to me, if you want something, you work for it. You know, and the people that you surround yourself with, you know, the people that are coming all the time, that are staying engaged, staying involved, are those that are staying on the right track. You know, I'm a deacon at my church. Like I said, I'm property manager at Parsley Church over by the post office. I go to church right up the street at Purpose Place on Kid Country Southgate. All those little things matter. And like I said, staying connected with someone that has your best interest at heart and wants to see you succeed, like inside out, is always going to make a difference. But you're always going to have those people that, you know, I used to see people when I was incarcerated, and you knew they're going to come back before they left. You know? So those things you can't help. But people that want to help themselves, inside out is there for them. And I've said that from the beginning.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah.
Are all of your incoming people on parole at the time they come to?
It's a mix. I would say a lot of them are. We also do work with some folks that have never been to prison, but have maybe spent long periods of time in jail or like a work release program. So we do go out to the Hope House, our area work release, every week, and we meet folks. So some folks we work with have never been to prison, but you know, still have maybe multiple felony convictions that really impact, you know, their ability to find housing and employment. And we hope in those situations we can intervene before, you know, it escalates. But yeah, the vast majority of folks we work with have been to prison. Either they're currently on parole, or it's been, you know, a very recent discharge. We do not terminate service at any point, which is what a lot of times a lot of reentry organizations will do. They'll say, oh, you've been out for 12 months, okay, goodbye. We don't do that, because we know that like change happens in your life. You know, things are gonna go up and down. You might be really stable for an entire year, and then your mom passes away, you know, and your life gets thrown with a curveball, and you might need some support again. So we always say that we're kind of there as long as somebody needs us. And some people we work with for years. I just had a gentleman pop in 2 weeks ago I haven't seen for 2 years. And he walked in the door and he's like, I need some help. And I was like, great, so good to see you. It's been a while, what's new, you know? Let's catch up what's been going and keep moving forward, because you still have those barriers. You know, they're gonna be stronger right away, but a couple of years down the line, a lot of them are still there. And, you know, what can we do to support you, and how can we get you what you need?
How many,
Go ahead.
how many people, new and old, do you serve in a year, and how has that changed since 2015?
Sure. So right now we're serving over 200 people in the community every year, and then we're working with about 150 incarcerated individuals a year. So some of those people can be the same, you know, because if we're writing letters at the start of the year, then they come out. But yeah, throughout the year, about 200 people in the community and about 150 incarcerated individuals. And the number just keeps growing and growing. I think when I started 5 years ago, we were serving about 60 or 70 people a year, I think the number was. And so in 5 years, we've, more than doubled, who we're seeing. And some of them are folks that have continued to work with us, but a lot of it, it's constantly new people coming in. I just ran some numbers recently, and in our last, quarter, we had almost 30 people come in and do an intake. So that's, every week, a couple of new people that we're meeting and providing support to. So it's, if you think about like the Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. I mean, it's really true. In that sense, people know we're there. They're gonna find out about us, and word of mouth spreads, especially in the facilities. As I mentioned before, I'd love to say that no one ever goes back, but a lot of times when they do, they're kind of our biggest cheerleader. A couple of years ago, we didn't have anybody that we were working with at Fort Dodge Correctional Facility. And then we had one guy that we had worked with who got reincarcerated, and within a few months we were writing to 5 or 6 people at Fort Dodge. Because he would find out, oh, you're from Coralville, oh, you're from Iowa City, you gotta talk to Inside Out, you gotta talk to Inside Out. And so he would just kept connecting us with people. And I think the reality is, like, your counselor in the system might say, oh, you should write these folks. They may or may not trust that person, but if their buddy that they eat dinner with says, hey, you should write to Inside Out, they'll be like, oh, okay, sure. And so I think that word of mouth for us has been really helpful with connecting with people, and we always, appreciate it, because we know that it's a little easier to trust a place that somebody else, trusts. Yeah.
Do you get much interaction with the other services, parole, prison, jails, the staffs at those places? Do they reach out to you, or while we're around?
Sure, they do reach out to us, but I'd say probably us doing a lot more of the in-reach, I like to say. We do have a great working relationship with the 6th Judicial District, primarily the Work Release Center. I was actually just speaking with the director of that center earlier today, so we formed a really good partnership with them. They like having us out at the facility every week because they know that we support their residents, and we like being out there because we can connect with them. I know one of the last times I don't get out there as much anymore. Our case manager does the groups out there, but last time I was out there, one of the staff that I know was telling someone, hey, go talk to Michelle, go get in the group, go in there, you should go in there. So they're, promoting that the residents at the work release come and meet us and get connected with our services. And, that's something, it's relationship building that's taken some time. A few years to get there, and we've got a great relationship with them, which is great. I was talking with the director of reentry services with the Department of Corrections a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping our conversation is in 2023 we're going to start doing virtual presentations with the facilities, because they're still not allowing volunteers back in the facilities. So hey, video, I'll take it. It's not the same as walking in the door and seeing someone face to face, but hey, let's do a video visit, and I'd be happy to do that. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, all of them. There's 9 of them. There's 9 prisons in the state of Iowa. So, and some of them are really long, really long travel. Like I was to travel to Clarinda, I mean I'd spend basically the entire day in a car. So. Hey, that's great. Send me on a video screen so I don't have to spend 8 hours in a car. I would be okay with that. Yeah, we are, excited, looking forward to doing that this year.
I've been praying for a long time that God opens doors and allows, like Inside Out, to come inside. And now that I'm off papers and everything like that, because I would like to be able to go back so I can show men and women that, despite circumstances, you can be successful, you can do the right thing, and continue to move forward.
really thankful to be here. This has been really fun. Also, this place is beautiful, so I was kind of curious what it was like on the inside, so it was kind of nice to get the inside scoop and kind of poke around. But we really appreciate you guys coming and learning from us, and encourage you, if you want to get involved in any way, please do. I did bring some flyers, one about our reentry house and another one just about our brochure. But if you'd like to talk at all, feel free to pop up, stick around for a little bit, and also you can send us an email. And if you know where Allison is, you can probably always poke her down and say, hey, let me ask you some questions about Inside Out as well. We've got kind of a person on the inside, which is nice. Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you very much.